Oh, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Marcus. Oh, okay. Oh man, I can't wait to hear you lay the punchline on me. Oh yes, because the puppet has a string that you have to pull to open its mouth. I get it. That's a great. Oh, there you go. No. So let's start the podcast with that, fellas, because uh, joke writing, because ventriloquism breaks down, and I am a ventriloquist, or
Sure.
I guess I'm in the process of trying to be a really good ventriloquist, and in order to do that, what is a ventriloquist? Well, you talk without moving your lips, right? That's the giveaway. That's the thing that people pretty
Yeah.
much concentrate on. Can you talk without moving your lips? That takes lots of practice and rehearsal, like playing the guitar or the bass or shooting a basketball or getting really good and at algorithms and math, working with
Sure.
computers. So you need technique. The second thing you need is a puppet. And of course, these jokes that you were just telling were based around the old wooden slot jaw puppet, the old fashioned. The puppet has a slot jaw that's
Yeah.
open and closed with a lever, probably on a post inside the quote unquote puppet body. And the third thing you need is, and what I would say, what I would submit, and especially after listening to what you proposed in the last couple of minutes, the most important thing is content. What are you and your puppet going to do in performance? That might be singing, as Darcy Lynn Farmer, the girl who won America's Got Talent a couple of years ago. She's a singing ventriloquist, and without moving her lips. And Terry Fader, another America's Got Talent winner, a singing ventriloquist, great singer, incredible singer who also is a world class ventriloquist. And both of them are singing ventriloquists. I am not. And that is why Marcus and Nick opened our program here today with some jokes. I'm using
Yeah.
that in its loosest form, but here's the difference right here. And this will be my first point of the day. What I'll ask you a question. This is not a dad joke.
Okay.
This is how should I put it? Important. What is the definition of a joke? And I'll give you the opening to that. What is the definition of a joke? And the answer would be it is a series of words called a setup, and that is followed by a
Punchline.
no. It's followed by a paycheck. It's
Oh,
a series
paycheck.
of words that
I,
is
I'm
that
not able to produce that, so I've never.
right. So
Yeah.
there is the mentality, and that is the difference. And of course, then if you're going to tell quote unquote dad jokes, your interest has nothing to do, obviously, with making money. In fact, a dad joke by definition is the opposite of something that will make money. A dad joke gets you something called a which is a groan.
Yes.
And what is a
Yes.
groan worth? A groan a groan doesn't get you any money. So the first thing you need to do as you're writing, as you're trying to think of jokes, whether the dad jokes or not, is to come up with something that is going to result in someone somewhere calling you and saying, "Will you come and perform in our church basement at our fundraising? Our church is having a fundraising program event, and we want to bring in the community, or a comedy club needs an act because the really good acts won't come there anymore, so they hire me." So in the end, the the whole joke, and everybody takes this for granted. Joke, right? So let's start with that, with everything that's going on recently. For example, where I live, and I know you guys are in Macomb, Illinois, home of the Western Illinois Leathernecks, who we can talk about that later as well, because that is a football program that has decided to make a lot of money by playing Big Ten universities. So this is good for your bottom line, but the
Yes.
psyche of your players is basically gone because after you lost by a combined score of 100-10 in the last couple of weeks. What are you seriously? It's kind of like if you have a puppet and you write a bunch of dad jokes, it's the same thing. And there's a lot of correlation there. Obviously, Western Illinois turned into tackling dummies for a couple of weeks. And that kind of relates to ventriloquism and the joke that Nick started us off with. I guess my point would be this. If you're going to go out and make a living as a performer who does jokes, you will need to have content that everybody can laugh at. And so we'll start with this. Where I live, we have a refrigerator that has an ice machine. Adorable. Everybody goes over and gets ice until the ice machine broke. So now the ice machine is broken. So there are two ways to look at that. Getting angry, which is what I do, get angry and then frustrated and annoyed and think, oh my gosh, what other bad things can happen? Or take it to the next level, which is we're going to have to replace the ice machine. How can we make that funny? There's something funny about it. Family members have come over and broken the ice machine and then left, which is what family members do. So now how we can find humor here. Here's how you do it. You get in the car, and the family members have also trampled through the garden. So the wife and I are going to head out, and we're going to get some new plants and some ice at a mini mart. First, we stop at Home Depot, and I drop my wife off, and she's going to run in and get some plants. As she's running through the Home Depot parking lot, she turns around and yells at me, "What are you going to go get?" And I put my head out the window of the car, and I yell, "Ice." The next thing you know, the Home Depot shopping center parking lot is filled with people from other countries running around screaming, "Oh no!" As a matter of fact, my wife is Brazilian, and I think a couple of her friends were there, and they had a little party in the parking lot there at Home Depot. So now, what are we talking about? We're talking about taking a situation and finding a punchline that will be universal, that does not take a side. All I did was yell the word ice. I didn't say anything about why that would be work on two different levels. I'm not making any assumptions. I'm not making any comments on what's happening sociologically or politically. What I'm doing is I'm using the word ice. And here's another thing, just for you two. I don't know why this is, but here's a truth that I found after doing this for a long time. One word punchlines are the best, and they get the biggest laughs. One word, which is why in sitcoms, a lot of times the best punchlines are no or hello, stuff like that, and you'll hear the audience laugh. I don't know why one word and one syllable punchlines always get big responses. And so for me, when I'm thinking, okay, so we'll deconstruct the whole thing. I'm going to write a joke about the ice machine. Ice, what's going on with ice? And then I've been doing this a long time, so I don't have to write it out. I used to have to write everything out. Ice, and then you start thinking North Pole, polar bears. You go through the whole thing. Ice, and then there's the ice immigration thing. Wait a minute, a little. I just saw on the video here, I was watching YouTube, over Marcus's head and almost over Nick's head, but not quite, a little light bulb go off. Oh yeah, I get it. So ice becomes the punchline. Oh, I'm gonna try to get to a point now. So now I'm working backwards. So the punchline is gonna be ice. So now how am I gonna get to where my wife is gonna turn around and yell at me? What are you gonna go get? I'm gonna get ice. Why are we gonna have to do that? Well, I'm gonna have to do an ice machine with. Oh yeah, that's how I started the whole thing. So that's how I construct, deconstruct, and put together a punchline. So now I've taken 9 valuable minutes of your podcast and explained it through one pathetic little joke. But
I love it.
The point is, so that's so as a ventriloquist, you can have this. Here's the problem: you can have great technique, and I mean outstanding, brilliant. Oh my gosh, he made his voice sound like it was 500 feet away. How do you do that? My question then would be, who cares? And then, oh my gosh, he can say the letter P perfectly without moving his lips. How can he do that? After twice, you're going to say, really, who cares? It's very similar to being a really good bass player. And you can play really well in the key of E. All right, that's awesome. Can you play in any other keys? No. All right, can you play anything besides E, G sharp, and B? No. So basically, as a bass player, you can only play in one key and only those notes that correspond with yes. Well, that's that. How far are you going to get, really? But if you can play, as you know, in a couple of different keys, and you can master all the progressions and all the bass lines Well, then, you become much better, and then you're going to make more quote unquote money. And then, similar to ventriloquist, if you reach the point where your ventriloquism act elicits lots of applause and laughter, then you're probably going to get, as I said a few minutes ago, that's going to get you paid.
Yeah, for sure. And I loved how you were talking about dad jokes being better as one-liners. Well,
Yes.
I do have some puppet logic for you today.
Oh, I can't wait for this.
Like I tried fixing my puppet with duct tape. Now he's only opens his mouth when I tell a sticky joke.
Okay, so wait. Now let me just stop you right there.
Sure.
So, brilliant joke, by the way. Man, I wish I had material like that for my act. All right, so
I bet you don't.
I don't use those wooden-headed slot jaw puppets anymore.
Okay.
And the reason I don't use those anymore is because years ago I was living in Chicago, and I would take the what they call the elevated, a train from the north side of Chicago down to the south side, then get on a bus and ride the bus to a pizza joint that was doing comedy shows on Friday and Saturday nights. A mom and pop operation, just lovely people, very nice. And whoever came out, that's who you perform for. They give you a couple of $100. So I've got a wooden slot jaw puppet in a nylon athletic bag. So the puppet is in the bag, and it's a brutal wintry a snow rain mix in Chicago. And I'm walking from a bus stop after getting off the train and off the bus. I'm now walking about a mile and a half to the gig in the rain and snow. I get there and I'm a little late, and she says, "You need to go on in 2 minutes. The MC's, you're right on right now." And I say, "No problem." So they introduce me. I go on, open the nylon bag, water pours out, and the puppet has warped. The composite that made up my ventriloquist slot jaw puppet has warped so much related to your joke that the mouth is stuck. And I tried pulling the string on the handle inside the puppet's head, inside the body, but the mouth will not open. So I have to take my other hand and pull the mouth open, which I did. The problem with that was it's now stuck in the open position. The mouth on the puppet is stuck in the open position, and now I can't get it to close. And I have 45 minutes to go, and my entire act is based on a ventriloquist act. And I've got about 44 minutes left. The crowd's sitting there waiting. So what I ended up doing was kind of like what I'm doing now, and I always say with me, it takes me 45 minutes to say hello to an audience. So when I'm working and the MC in a comedy club or at an event, I just did a private event for the Barnabas Foundation up in suburban Chicago a couple of nights ago. The woman says to me before I go on, "How long are you going to do?" I say, "Well, how long do you want?" Because it takes me 45 minutes to say hello to an audience. So do you want me to do 45 minutes or do you want me to do an hour and a half? And she said, "Why don't you just keep it to 30? So, and that night that the puppet broke, it was a moment for me because I did a lot of improvising on stage. And we can talk about this if you want to later. I worked at a theater in Chicago called the Second City Theater, which is where I met my wife, which is an improvisational comedy theater, which is comedy. It's based kind of like what Nick and Marcus do. Comedy, it's based on the moment and being in the moment, paying attention to your fellow performers and coming up with comedy or humor on the spot.
Yeah.
Without having a script. And to be honest, I had done that before. I was familiar with it. And what I did that night was going to the audience. "What is your name?" "Dave." "Where are you from?" "Well, I'm from Oak Lawn, Illinois." "And what do you do for a living?" And this became something that I would do for many, many years and got me a job as an MC at Zany's Comedy Club in Chicago and later at Catch a Rising Star in New York City, where I got really good at being funny talking just the way I am right now and asking people kind of what you people do on this podcast. "Hey, what's your name? Where are you from? What do you do? Let's talk about that." And then without being mean-spirited, or I guess in my world, it would be, I would call it faith-based, where I'm working, this is crazy to say, but this is a rule I have. If you want to be a comedian, I would say one way to get really good at doing it once you start writing your jokes is work to the highest point of your intelligence. For example, my IQ is probably about an 8, but I constantly try to work to that 8 as much as I possibly can. So let's break that down. If you're going to do a joke and be funny about, or be a little self-deprecating, so my family's from Grand Ridge, Illinois. I grew up in Ottawa, Illinois. Went to high school in Ottawa, Illinois. Actually, I was born in Clarendon Hills suburbs of Chicago. Lived in Ottawa, Illinois. My family farms in Grand Ridge, and I went to the University of Illinois. So my joke about IQ with that is, when I left Grand Ridge and went to the University of Illinois, the average IQ in both places went down 25 points. So that is a way to be self-deprecating and find a punchline without being mean and without saying I'm smarter than everybody else here, which is kind of what comedy is, guys. Because if you think about it, how audacious and how arrogant do you have to be to think that I can go into a bar in some little town in America with a microphone and just me, and I'm now talking to a bunch of people that I probably have very little in common with, but I'm so funny, I'm so brilliant that I'm going to make these people laugh for an hour. How big is your ego to think that you can actually go in there and do that? And so I have yet to meet a comedian who's not confident in themselves, and their act might be, I'm really this shy, demure little person. But the truth is, they are so confident. They know how to write jokes. They're happy. Oh, you want to put me on a roller coaster in front of 7 children, 2 of whom have really, really bad cases of autism, and you want me to do 30 minutes? How much? And that's pretty much the way a comedian looks at everything. How can I find a way, as with my puppet whose slot jaw was broken, how am I going to kill my next hour? And it's not even really about anything but I want to do a good job. And a lot of times comedians, they'll go in, nobody knows who they are. They go in, they're getting a couple $100, and they will work their butts off for the audience and a lot of times, a lot of comedians are more really good comedians right now than I think ever before.
But Marcus had something he wanted to ask you.
Yeah. So, what do you call a ventriloquist whose puppet runs away?
Wow, I don't know.
An unemployed.
Yes,
an unemployed comedian.
That's basically it. So
we just figured, since you had problems with the connection, that it was probably more puppet problems than anything else.
Here's the thing you got to remember about the puppets. First of all, this is 2025. They are not puppets. They are mannequin Americans. So let's get that straight first. Second, I always say my puppets have a lot more personality than a lot of real people that I know. And this has been exemplified in so many ways throughout my life. But let's just talk about, we were talking about, you're in Macomb, Illinois, home of Western Illinois University, and the puppet is also called the dummy. I played college football for the University of Illinois back in the day. I was a walk-on football player. So how does that, I will relate this to ventriloquism. Just give me a second. So I walked on to play football at the University of Illinois. What is a walk-on? A walk-on is someone who shows up at a major university in America, was not recruited to play football, was not asked to come and play football, is not wanted, and is not needed by the football team, but shows up anyway. And it's a lot like going to a comedy club or having a podcast and a ventriloquist shows up. The similarities between being a walk-on and a ventriloquist are very, very similar. Even more pressing is I was on the scout team for 3 years. So I was a scout team player for 3 years. Basically, I was a human tackling dummy. So ventriloquism and my football career are closely related. Let's keep in tune with your wood jokes, the wood dad jokes that you've been telling. The head coach when I was at the University of Illinois at Ohio State University, the Ohio State University, was a man named Woody Hayes. And we played Ohio State. And when I was a fifth year, I got redshirted, so I played 5 years. And when I was a fifth year senior at the University of Illinois, we played at the Ohio State University. The only other person on the field my size was their head coach, a living legend, an icon who had put Ohio State on the map as head coach, Woody Hayes. He saw me warming up before the game and he said, "You're a Big Ten football player?" And he walked away. That I went down. I went down on one knee and prayed, "Dear God, do not let me play in this game." I was so intimidated. But it's now the fourth quarter. We're losing to Ohio State 16-10. Fourth quarter, we're only down a touchdown. I'm playing. I pushed number 9 out of bounds, and there, on the sideline, standing in front of me, was Woody Hayes. And I yelled at him, "Yeah, I guess I am a Big Ten football player. I just pushed your boy out of bounds." I run back onto the field to get in the huddle. Woody Hayes, I'm not making this up, chases me onto the field at the Ohio State Stadium, shouting things that are not in the Bible. Okay? Game over. We lose by 48. This Easter Island of a man comes over to me and says, "Man, I've never seen Coach so mad. You got to get out of here." So I run to the locker room, get home. It's about a month later, and I'm with my dad. We're watching college football, a bowl game. And you can see this on YouTube if you don't believe me. Ohio State is playing Clemson in the Gator Bowl. And Ohio State is winning until a Clemson player intercepts an Ohio State pass and is running down the Ohio State sideline. With God as my witness, this happened. Woody Hayes tackles the Clemson player. My dad looks at me and said, "Did you see that, Taylor? Who do you think drove Woody Hayes over the edge, buddy?" And I said, "I think it was me, Pop, the human tackling dummy." My nickname at the University of Illinois was the Fighting Fetus. I was the worst player on the worst team in the history of Big Ten college football. And while I was in school, I got hurt. I got a knee injury, a really bad one. And that is how I started professionally performing as a ventriloquist. I had a huge cast. This is before the days when they did laser surgery. So I had a huge cast on my left knee, on my entire left leg. Actually, they did everything. The cartilage was ripped apart, the ligaments, the whole thing. So they had reconstructive surgery, and I actually played 2 more years after that on that knee, because in those days it was like the Flintstones. They had the pterodactyl come in with the beak, and they cut open my knee, and then he took a couple pieces of rock and put them together, and they played the theme song, and next thing you know, my 40-yard dash was going from 5.2 seconds to 4.9, because it was like I had a bionic knee. That it was just a different world that we lived in. That was last century that I was playing. So, but I started performing at my fraternity house. I started doing shows with my ventriloquist and music act. So I kind of owe my ventriloquist career, or being a dummy and using dummy in every innuendo you can think of, as in a tackling dummy and as a performer. And then I started performing at the University of Illinois, fraternity and sorority parties and school functions and so on, and started making money doing it. And one of my first jokes was I was in line at the dorm to get food, and I got some kind of green quivering stuff, and it actually jumped off my plate and jumped onto the plate of the person behind me, and he started screaming, "Make it jump back on your plate! Make it jump back on your plate!" So, being a ventriloquist, I said, "Come on back over here," and I had the little green thing go, "Okay, here I come." And so that was like the beginning of my joke writing career. So and then I would perform it, and then when I wrote some jokes for some famous comedians, and there was this theater in Chicago called the Second City, and I went up on audition there. And this is another good story. So I go up to audition to be part of the Second City Theater in Chicago, and they had the director there, and I've never done any theater. I don't know anything about theater. But I walk into this theater, and there's a person there. "Who are you?" "My name's Taylor Mason. I'm going to be a comedian." And they kind of look at you sideways, really. So then I meet another person. "Who are you?" "I'm Taylor Mason. I'm going to be a comedian." So then there's a girl sitting just outside the doors of the theater. She's sitting on a chair looking over a script. So, and she looks up at me and she says, "Oh my gosh, who are you?" And I say, "My name is Taylor Mason. I'm going to be a comedian." And she gives me the look of total fear. And she says, "My name is Megan. I'm an actor and I'm here to audition." And I say, "Oh, what a coincidence. I'm here to audition too." And I see this look on her face go from, "This is a huge career opportunity for me. I can't wait to see who I'm working with," to the realization she's working with me, a complete doofus. So we go into the theater and the director says, "We're going to do 5 through the door." I love telling you a story. I have no idea what's 5 through the door. Never heard of it. I look at her and she says to me, "Do you know what 5 through the door is?" And I say, I don't know. Is it a drink that they serve at the bar? I don't know. And she goes, "Oh no." So she tries to explain. And she says, "Just watch what I do. Stand on stage and watch what I do." So here's what 5 through the door is. The actor goes off stage, comes on stage as a character, and sets up a scene, improvisation. She comes on and she says, "I bought this dress here yesterday. It doesn't fit. Can I take it back?" And then I'm supposed to be comically the person. "Oh, let me see what we've got in your size." And look at her. "You're about a what? A 33?" And you're just trying to come up with anything you can come. And I didn't know what I was doing. So after 2 or 3 of those, I'm like, "Oh, so you come on stage as a different character every time." And she's trying to audition and I'm thinking, while she's doing that, I can't wait for my chance to do this. I'm going to have the most fun ever. So now she's done it, and the director says, "All right, switch. Mason, you're coming in on stage." So I walk on. This is the first thing. There's a stool on stage. She's standing behind the stool with a look of fear on her face. She has no idea who I am or what I do. And I walk over to her, and I yell at her, "I bought this here yesterday, and it doesn't work." And I take my arm and I drop it on the stool, and then I lift it and it falls. "I bought this arm here yesterday. Look at it now. It's worthless. I have it. Yeah, you put it in, but it doesn't work. I want a new arm. I want it right now." And she's looking at me like, "Oh, what do I say?" And don't you get it? I'm swinging it around, and the director goes, "Great, next." So I'm like, "Oh, this is the best day of my life." And I'm going to come in. So I come in now and I walk on stage and I'm looking around like, is this the meeting of the socially inept moron club? I'm running around the stage. She doesn't know what to do. So, and the director's like, "Oh, this is great. Go off." And I'm just thinking of everything crazy. The producer, Joyce Sloan, who would later be a friend of my wife, walks in. There are 3 of us in the theater: the director, me, and this actor. And Joyce Sloan says, "Is Taylor Mason here?" "I'm here." She says, "I'm looking at your resume. It says you know how to sight read music." "Yes, I'm a piano player. I can sight read music." And the director says, "Hey, I'm having an audition here." And she says, "This is more important." She puts sheet music down on the baby grand piano right there in the theater. And she said, "Can you play this? It's a vamp in E, piece of cake. And the title of it is I Hate Liver. And the first line is, I hate liver. Liver makes me quiver. Liver makes me curl right up and die." So I play it for her and she goes, "You're hired." I get hired at that moment as a musical director at the Second City Theater in Chicago. And I met my wife there and never looked back. I just kept working in the comedy business. I was just gotten out of college. So so it all relates to the fact that I put myself through college doing, as a walk-in football player, doing a ventriloquist act. And then I performed and I was pretty comfortable being on stage. And then I go to this theater and I was put in a little bit. I kind of like being in, I think, a lot of music and performance theater, directing, television writing, all of that, podcasting. You guys know this. You have to get really good at being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And this podcast is a really good example of that, because of the platform already is broken down one time. But you're basically, what are we doing? Who's our guest? What are we going to say? How are we going to segue? Or you just get to the point where, it's going to be this really uncomfortable moment. Let's just deal with whatever it is. This is how God planned it. We're just going to go with, there's a reason he put us here, and we've got this clown with us. Let's go with it.
And speaking of uncomfortable,
Yeah.
you know what we love to do besides dad jokes on our podcast? What do you think we like to do, Marcus?
Well, we do this or that, or fix it or dead.
But what do we love to do with our guests?
Oh, we like to roast you guys.
Oh yeah, we love to roast our guests. And Taylor, before we get any further, it's your turn.
Yeah.
So here's our roast, all right? Taylor, your puppets are so famous. One of them probably has better booking agents than we do. And honestly, your kids must have the weirdest childhood memories ever. Most kids say, "My dad talks to himself." Yours get to say, "My dad argues with a piece of foam and lost."
Hey, but in all seriousness, Taylor, you've been making people laugh for decades, and more importantly, you've been pointing people towards Christ in the process. We're honored to have you here.
Yeah. And Taylor, before we start throwing voices around, let's thank today's sponsors because we got to pay the bills. Pretty good wood turning, where the work is solid and the name is humble.
Hide Your Girl Golf Apparel, respectfully rebellious, dangerously drippy, grip it, rip it, and look good doing it. Golf just got good.
And we are also found on this network. It's called Faith Points TV. Yeah, streaming our podcast every week, so you can catch us on screen as well as in your earbuds. And of course, the Intentionally Uncommon Initiative,
helping build Dad's legacy that lasts for generations.
Yeah. So, that was a simple roast.
Can I follow up?
But
so my wife, when my kids were
Sure.
little, they're in their 30s now, but when my kids were little, in my office, my wife had put like hangers, spikes in the wall, and I would hang my puppets in my office. So the puppets would be hanging, let's say 15 of them, hanging on the wall. And my youngest kid's room was right next to my office. And every night, that kid would come and make sure my office door was closed before that kid went to bed, because that the idea that listen, it's a scary thing, and I get it. The eyes, now the eyes for my puppets a lot of times are ping pong balls that have been cut in half. So that's a pretty big eyeball if you think about it. It's a ping pong ball, and then you color in black or blue, or you find some gizmo that you can put on there, some little trinket that can go on there, look like quote unquote, and the real eye, the iris. But those puppet eyes, I think, are what's really scary about, and even with the Muppets, it's the eyes that always, oh my gosh. But at the same time, I always tell ventriloquists who are starting out, if you want to really establish your relationship with your puppet or your alter ego or your muse, whatever, look into the eyes of the puppet as you're talking to it. And it sounds weird, but what it does is, from the audience, and this works in television, theater, on stage, wherever, if you establish that relationship with your puppet where you're actually looking right into its eyes and it's looking at you, it's very similar to human contact in that you are making eye contact, quote unquote, with this creature. And it tightens that relationship from the audience point of view, so that everything that comes after, if you've memorized your lines and you have, as we talked about, having good content, that it all explodes. It makes it much more believable. And that comes from working as an actor at the Second City Theater.
So, I have a couple questions for you. But you won Star Search back in the day, and for some of our younger listeners out there, that was like America's Got Talent, but with less confetti and more mullets. Okay, so what was your experience like, and how did that shape your journey?
So Star Search, 1991. I'm out of college, and let's do it this way. So Star Search was shot on the old Tonight Show set, and I know I'm dating myself. So there was a Tonight Show with a man named Johnny Carson and his co-host Ed McMahon, and they had a desk and a couch the way most talk shows have. But in those days, the microphones were not as good as the microphones that we're using now. In those days, microphones were on a boom, wired microphones. There were no wireless microphones. There was no microphone built into your iPhone or your iPad or whatever. There was a microphone that was over your head, and they would move it back and forth from the host of the show, Johnny Carson, to the co-host, Ed McMahon. And you can see this on YouTube. Sometimes you can see the shadow. I mean, it's the 80s and 90s. You could see the shadow of this microphone on the face of the host, Johnny Carson, and it would go over to the co-host, Ed McMahon, to pick up all their voices. And you'd see the microphone shadow go back and forth. So I fly out to rehearse for the show with my ventriloquist partner, Romeo, and we're going to do we are on the show. We are now rehearsing on the Tonight Show set with Ed McMahon and Johnny Carson used, but our show is called The Tonight Show. I'm sorry, our show is called Star Search. The set is the same as The Tonight Show with that microphone that goes back and forth from the host of the show, Johnny Carson, thank you, Romeo, and his co-host, Ed McMahon. Johnny Carson, Ed McMahon. So we are rehearsing, and the rehearsal is a nightmare. It's a disaster. It's a complete disaster. Explain. I'm going to. The microphone, whoever's operating the microphone is, as I'm working, moving the microphone from me over to Romeo as we're working. So they can hear me perfectly. But when they move the microphone, there's no voice coming from the puppet because the microphone is not over my head. The microphone is over the head of the puppet. We gave him 20 minutes to figure it out. He's a voter. Okay, we don't need to go. And he's a graduate of the Ohio State University. Okay, you've made your point. So Star Search, and that's the joke I got of doing Star Search. Tell him more. We won $100,000 on the show. The money is gone. Don't ask. So, actually, and what are you doing? I'm going to put you on. I want to stay. Who are these guys? Nick and Marcus. What is it? It's a podcast. Oh, God. All right, sorry. Here, sit down over here. So you do a TV show like that, and then you have a little bit of notoriety. We moved the family to Los Angeles, and we lived in LA for a few years. And then I got a job writing for, you won't believe this, what was going to become Fox News.
Your career, you've named it the puppet angle. Why puppets, and why the puppet angle?
In the world of comedy clubs in the 80s and 90s, everything was about stand-up comedy. Everything was, Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno, and later on Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle. And so everybody just doing stand-up comedy. One way to stand out is be a really good ventriloquist. Not do, I don't want to be insulting, not do dad jokes.
How did your ventriloquism become?
Because, I guess the biggest thing is my dream was someday I would be on a podcast that would be interrupted by somebody's buddy driving 75 miles an hour on a 4-lane highway in Western Illinois for absolutely no reason at all, indiscriminately just joining a podcast. That was my dream. And so that was the whole point.
Yeah.
Hey, that reminds me. My puppet got stage fright the other day, and so I had to speak for him, and it was it was the most awkward interview I've ever had.
Oh, so hey,
Man.
out there, you're a husband, a dad, an influencer. You have material that influences kids, adults, dummies. What have your kids or your wife taught you about faith and about laughing and about rolling it all together as a disciple of Christ?
Everything is faith-based. Everything is faith-based. Or the slogan would be more Jesus. All right. So, the slogan, I'm not doing a very good job. Then you probably need more Jesus. My life is a shambles. Maybe you need more Jesus. My relationship with my wife and my children isn't very good. Well, maybe you need more Jesus. So the answer is always more Jesus. And it's not trite.
Absolutely.
It is a very, very, very high bar. We talked earlier about working to the top of your intelligence. I don't think there's a deeper, more resonating way to work toward that intelligence than to put your faith in your Savior, Jesus Christ. That is the way that I approach That's my approach, so that it affects everything. It affects how you write your jokes. Remember, we talked about how the definition of a joke is basically a paycheck, because if you're going to do it, even if you're the most talented ventriloquist, singer, joke writer, performer, podcaster, even if the most talented one in the world, to get there, you're going to have to. There are going to be a lot of pitfalls. There are going to be a lot of problems. There's going to be things that you can't foresee. You're going to be out on podcasts, and indiscriminate people are going to drop by for no reason whatsoever. But having great faith in your faith is going to not only affect the way you work, but will affect the way that your wife and your children, your family sees you, and your relationships and everything else. So I would say first, that's the first thing. Would be, the slogan should be more Jesus. So when I was a little boy, I had a lisp. I could not say the letter S, and I would put my tongue between my teeth so that the F sound came out like I was saying the soft TH sound, like you would have in the word froth. So frost would come out frost. So I had this lisp. My grandmother, who was a very church-going person, had introduced me to Jesus Christ, and she thought that if I learned ventriloquism, how to talk without moving my lips, I would have to think and focus and concentrate, and I would learn how to say the letter S, because I would want my puppet to say the letter S without moving my lips. You'd want your puppet. And the reason she got that idea was there was a lady on television named Sherry Lewis who did a show, and she had a sock puppet that was a farm animal, my family farms, and the sock puppet was named Lamb Chop. It was just a sock on her hand. So she would, and that sock pronounced the letter S perfectly. So my grandmother put two and two together. Ventriloquism will make the boy, I mean, it's a prayer that everybody, when he's going to overcome this lisp, and ventriloquism. So I take a sock. So I would take the sock, just a sock, any old sock, and put it on my hand as if I was putting it on my foot. And I would stuff the front of the sock inside my palm so that my thumb would disengage from my forefingers, from all four fingers, and the puppet mouth would open and close. And I would stand in front of a mirror and look into the mirror and look at the sock on my hand, open the sock's mouth, and there's a nice big gaping hole there like a mouth. And then I would take a word, and instead of me saying it, I would put it in the sock's mouth, say hello, hello, and not move my lips. Am I doing it? You're doing great. Thank you. You're welcome. So I would look at my sock. Look at me. Well, I'm not really doing that right now. Look at me. Okay. So, and I would form a relationship between me and my sock. You need a name. Okay. A clever, interesting name. We're on a really cool podcast. Is it cool? Yes. Do they have indiscriminate teeth will drop by? Yes. That happens all the time. This is the greatest podcast we've ever done. It really is. So you need a name, okay? It's a really important podcast. Obviously, they have people dropping by. Yes. So you need a really clever, imaginative name. Got it. Tell everybody what your name is. Suck. No. Be clever. Be really imaginative. Be philosophical. Socrates. No. Be athletic. Soccer. All right, whatever. So, okay, so, and I would do this, right? Older and older. And ironically, coincidentally, which we don't believe in. We don't really believe in irony or coincidence. Christians, yes. Except in a theatrical sense. Yes, in a theatrical sense, which is what we're using. So the puppet can say the letter S. Do it. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. And I don't move my lips. No, you don't. Oh. And the puppet talks. Hello. Right. And so I formed this relationship with Sock. Thank you. You're welcome. I can make Sock be anything. Hello. Okay. Cute or I am your worst nightmare. Yes. So the Sock can be anything I want it to be. It's weird. Yes. Is this a TED Talk? No, it's not a TED Talk. It's a podcast. It's awfully weird. Okay, say goodbye. I don't want to go. I want to go. Yeah, you're out of here. So that's how my entire, career. You can nail, if you boil it down to the essential elements that have made up this career, it would be more Jesus and a sock, which fits this podcast perfectly.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yes.
For the dads listening out there, would you say you're one that finds joy in wooden things
Oh
or sock
gosh,
puppets?
I don't, you know, that's a loaded question because I don't really find joy in what I do for a living. I find joy in just, just, I mean, driving to, out to dinner with my wife the other day, and just was laughing really hard. Or Tuesday night, this coming Tuesday, I'm taking my oldest kid to see the New York Mets play the San Diego Padres, a late season baseball game. It'll just be my kid and myself. And, that to me, those are moments. My youngest works in the theater business in New York City. So it's very high stress and very, a very competitive field, but it's always great to see them. And they've traveled all over the world. My family's been all over the world because of what I do for a living. So we have been, and they've met a lot of people, and they've had a lot of experiences, but it's the experience that obviously has more to me. There's more faith based, the experience itself. It's not really me. I mean, I can remember gigs where they're sitting and watching me. They're in the balcony, and I look up, and there's these two little heads over the edge of the balcony. I mean, it's heartwarming, but the stuff that really for me has been the most meaningful and the most resounding, and the stuff that is most powerful is the times I spend. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to going to this ball game on Tuesday night with my son Hank. We'll just sit there. Now we're not sitting like right next to the diamond. We're sitting a few rows up, and it'll just be a dad and his son, two guys watching a baseball game and talking. And those moments to me, and I've been doing this since they were little. I try to find a time and a place where I and my wife can join one of the kids or both of them and go to dinner or go see a show or go to a ball game or whatever.
Absolutely. Would you say, because my
Right.
kids, I'm a musician, obviously. Don't know why the guitars give it away or not, but uh, my kids have fallen in my footsteps a little bit. My oldest is a drummer. My middle likes to
Yeah.
play every instrument known to man. Uh, would you say that your kids have kind of caught what you do, kind of that bug,
My
or have
wife
they
says
kind
that
of
for my
gone their own
youngest,
way?
it was a ripoff growing up because I wrote a book. The book is titled Irreversible. You can find it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I think it's $15 or $20. It's 300 pages. There's lots of words. I wrote the book so that my kids would know, because on a Wednesday night I would be home. They'd come home from school and have dinner, and then I'd leave, and then they'd do their homework or whatever, and then they'd get up the next morning, and there I was. So to them, I was always there. But what really happened was right after dinner or just before dinner, I drove from New Jersey to the middle of Pennsylvania, or I drove to New York, or I drove somewhere, did a show, and then drove all night to get back so that I was there to walk the dog and be there when they had breakfast in the morning. So I wrote a book so that they would have a literal history. And of course, now I would do it differently. I would just do it as an ebook, or I would just do it as a blog. But I wrote the book probably 10 or 15 years. I guess it's 14 years old. So I wrote the book basically for them. But if you look at it, it's got a lot of good reviews. A lot of people have read it. I've reconnected with old friends through the book. So, and I wrote that basically for my children because they grew up, and my wife always says to my youngest, who's in show business, that it was a little bit of a ripoff because they grew up in a nice neighborhood. We took vacations. They lived a life that, a person, a working person with a professional job would have. And we did, the perks were a lot of times travel was paid for. Obviously the kids didn't know that, and I always worked. I've always worked. And for whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe that's just more Jesus, but I have always worked. My prayer is never, let me do a great show. Let me be the best there is. Let me be unforgettable. Let me be brilliant. My prayer is always let things go somewhat according to plan. Obviously, that prayer was not answered today, but my prayer for every program is always just let the words come out in the right order. Right, just
For sure.
basic things that I would expect from my Savior and my Lord, and I don't expect them to make me something that I'm not. And I'm hopefully for my children to see that this is how the guy works. And my oldest is a musician. He's recorded an album, but what he learned recording his album in Brooklyn, New York was that computer ease is very similar to music. There's lots of math there, and you're always kind of looking ahead. As a musician, you're always you're playing in this stanza or in this measure, but you're looking ahead. And you're always on one or two, or you're counting. You're constantly counting as a musician. You may not be aware of it, but time is everything. It's very similar to music. It's also, computers are very similar to Legos. It's parts fitting together. And this kid was really good with Legos and music, and now does a lot of IT work. So I would say the answer to your question is yes for both of them. They have, what I do has definitely affected the way they approach their work and the way they work and what they're doing.
So I have a question for you. And it kind of goes along with that, following that your kids kind of do similar things, or have an interest in similar things. And I was going to ask you about discipleship, right? So you've been using your comedy to point towards the truth, and how do you use your comedy as a tool to lead people into discipleship? Or to
Okay, I'm a
discipleship?
terrible evangelist. So let's not get
Okay.
crazy, because
Oh,
I am
yeah.
just, I'm the worst evangelist ever. But I think I'm setting an example, and without, I stay away from doctrine, and I stay away from preaching. There are preachers who are really good at preaching, and there are people who know doctrine
Yeah.
inside and out, and they've written books, and they give talks, and they are asked to disciple and minister to people all over the planet. My thing is basically, I'm a comedian who is a Christian. I'm not a Christian comedian. So what is the difference there? A comedian who's a Christian. Well, for one thing, I guess the way I always look at it is that I'm a comedian who's a Christian. I'm not a Christian comedian. And the difference is that I'm not always trying to sell something after after the program. There's not like a table of merch. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, and that's the way a lot of people make a living. And good for them. More power. God loves you. Good for you. And God bless you and Godspeed. For me, there's a story in the Bible about my Savior in the temple, and he sees all this stuff being sold in his name, and he just flips out and just wipes all the stuff off the table in the temple. And I'm a little bit of a hypocrite on that, because I toured with Bill Gaither and played all these arenas, and I sold pig puppets, because a pig is a big part of pig puppet is a part of my act. And I sold, and this is interesting, I made more money on the head of the pig puppet per capita than my family made on the real hogs. That percentage wise, yeah, I know, it's
Oh
crazy.
gosh.
So,
Yeah.
but what that taught me was, don't become arrogant about that. This is so. I mean, I toured with the Gaithers for probably 3 years and played all the arenas. And I've got a good story about that for you. And then I just was with Bill Gaither and the Homecoming Artists on a cruise ship last week up in Alaska. I think it was the last Gaither Homecoming cruise to Alaska, and Bill had asked me, and I said yes. We would play these arenas, and I have this pig puppet, Paco, who solo soy dito que tiene mucho miedo este año. Paco, the puppet, speaks fluent Spanish. The weird thing is, I don't speak a word of it. So we're doing our act at the Pepsi Arena, the home of the Denver Nuggets basketball team. I don't think it's still called the Pepsi Arena, but it's 20,000 seater. It's sold out. And I do my act with the Spanish speaking pig. Show's over, and our producer Dina comes over and says the manager of the arena wants to see you. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to get booked to play the Pepsi Arena with my puppet act. I can't believe my career. Thank you, Jesus. So I run up to the top of the arena into his office, and he's there, the guy that wants to meet me, the general manager. There's a woman and a man there as well. And I walk in, and he says, thanks for coming. We've got a problem. And the woman says, I heard you say that Mexicans are pigs. And I look at her and say, no, I would never say that. She said, you said it in Spanish. We all heard it. So I ask her to say it in Spanish, and she does. And I say, no. The pig said, I'm a scared little, so Sonia said, Vito, I'm a scared little pig. No, you didn't. You said that all Mexicans are pigs. And the manager says, we got a problem here, man. And the husband of this woman is there, and he's rolling his eyes. And I don't know what to do. I'm sweating. Ben Spear, one of the singers, comes into the office and says, "What's the problem?" Nobody, and the woman looks at him and says, "This man called all Mexican pigs with his pig puppet." And Ben Spear, who I didn't know that well, says to her, "Lady, you've got it all wrong. The pig is not even Spanish. The pig speaks 4 languages. The pig is actually Chinese. The pig is so smart, the pig helps the children on the tour with their math homework." So now the husband is standing behind the woman. He now starts laughing. He pats Ben Spear, giving this little talk, pats him on the back, and he leaves. The woman is angry. She yells at him, "Don't you walk out on me." She walks out of the building. They have a huge argument in the hallway. And the manager says to me, "Okay, I guess everything's okay." And we leave. It was over. I mean, Ben Spear is a very godly, one of the most godly people I've ever met. And he literally, I mean, that could have been just, all the ramifications of a pig saying nasty things in a 20,000 seat arena in front of all these people. Could have been a really bad situation. But instead, I had this friend who basically discipled me and my career in that night in the manager's office at the Pepsi Arena in Denver, Colorado, saved the day. And I don't know what happened to the woman and the husband. She was livid. He was laughing, and off they went into the night. So I haven't heard from them since.
You'll hear from them
Well,
after
but
this
yeah,
show.
I'll hear from.
Yeah.
I'm going to hear from a lot
Just
of
brought it
people
back
after
up.
this program, but it's going to have nothing to do with what I've talked about. It's going to be all about the guests that just dropped in indiscriminately during the program.
Yeah.
Oh, you've had your what was it, lamb chop
Yes, sock.
on the sock puppet. You, yeah, you had sock on. You
Romeo.
had
So
that
yeah, we were talking about
other
Romeo. For the people,
Yeah. Romeo.
this
Romeo.
is
Yeah, yeah,
Romeo.
yeah.
Here's Romeo,
So
and you can see his eyes are these big white. So it's I'm showing, if you're listening, it's a big white ping
Yeah.
pong ball that has been cut and glued on to. So the puppet itself is made out of furniture foam. So the nose, the cheekbone, the chin, this is all furniture foam that was cut and shaped and then glued on another giant piece of foam and then covered with terry cloth. In this case, kind of an off-white beige terry cloth. He has eyebrows that go up and down. All right. The eyebrows are a coat hanger. A coat hanger was stuck through its head. You guys call it a lobotomy. All right. So it was awful. No, it really wasn't that bad. I was there. It was disgusting, Taylor. Okay, whatever. So it was weird. So the coat hanger was stuck through his head. It hurt. All right, still hurts. And on the inside, my forefinger can grab. There's a little piece of the coat hanger that it grabs, and I can push the eyebrows up and down, so he can raise and lower his eyebrows. Thank you. And other than Romeo's mouth, which is huge, it sure is. The reason this puppet's mouth is so big, not a puppet. I know we already did that joke. The reason his mouth is so big is we play arenas or big theaters, and I want people in the back row to be able to see. Mm-hmm.
right.
So Romeo's mouth is huge. More than one reason. Okay, so, and then I'm taking my voice and I change it ever so slightly. How come? Because if we had the same exact voice, it wouldn't work. Really? Yeah. So your voice is kind of a nasally, whiny, I don't know, kind of a gen. Don't say it. Okay. Your voice is kind of a nasally, whiny, arrogant. Thank you. It's not a compliment. Kind of a nasally, whiny, arrogant voice, in which I chose for you. Thank you. And what I usually do with my puppets, Mannequin Americans, I think of the character first. I think of who it's going to be, what it's going to look like, how it's going to talk. Spanish pig, a Spanish-speaking pig, Romeo, whatever. And
Yeah.
then I tailor. Thank you. Pun. It was a pun. Oh, I just did a P word without moving my lips. Do it again. You do it again. Say pun. Pun. Okay. And so I'll give a quick ventriloquism lesson here, and I got to go here in a few minutes. But let's do the P sound without moving your lips. Can you do it? Yes. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a T sound. Taylor. Okay. So say my name. Taylor. So you've heard T. T. Taylor. Taylor. P is just almost for a ventriloquist. I don't make a perfect P sound because you can't. You're not that talented. What I do is a substitute sound. So it's not T, It's something similar. It's a P. Good. Thank you. You're welcome. So say peanut butter. Good. Say Peter Piper. Pick the peck. A pickled peppers. Good. Now say teeter tighter. Tick the tack. Peter Piper. Teeter tighter. Good. It's weird. It takes a lot of practice, like I said before, and it's very, very subtle. But what I'm doing is substituting a sound. Not quite a T. Not quite a P, but different than T. It's not T, T. It's P, T. Exactly. Thank you. You're going to sit down. No. I want to talk to these guys. I want to be one of those weird guests that come in out of nowhere. Here. All right. So a lot of it is substitute. You're substituting sounds for B, F, M, V, P, W, and Y. You're finding a substitute sound.
Okay.
A Y is a cheating one. So for Y, I put two sounds together, oo and I. Ooh, I. Say that really fast. Ooh, I. Do it really fast without moving your lips. Y. Okay?
Y.
So that's how you make the Y sound without moving your lips. It's the combination of ooh and I put together. Now, there was no book on that. I've also written a book about how to do ventriloquism called The Complete Idiot's Guide to Ventriloquism, which explains all this in detail. And because I didn't have anybody teaching me, I had to come up on my own. Well, how am I going to make the Y sound without moving my lips? And I practiced and tried. And it's like playing the bass or doing this podcast or anything else. You keep doing it until you're comfortable being uncomfortable. I think we talked about that before. And so you reach a point where you're comfortable being uncomfortable, making these substitute sounds so it looks as if your inanimate friend is actually alive.
You know, you guys have been listening to Taylor Mason and talking about his puppet angle. Next week, Marcus and I are going to do the whole episode without moving our mouths. Yeah, we're going to talk completely closed-mouthed.
Yeah.
I can't even say that without opening my mouth.
Closed mouth.
More Jesus.
Closed mouth. All right. This guy, though, Taylor Mason, everyone out there, is a man who proves that even a puppet can point us back to Jesus. And maybe today you've been feeling like life is being pulled by the strings that you don't control. The good news is that you don't have to stay there. God and his love can set you free. Romans 10:9 says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. That invitation is for you and everyone out there today. No strings attached. So if you've been watching this episode of the Foundational Fathers podcast and you feel like you want to take the next step, I invite you to pray this prayer after me real quick. Lord Jesus, thank you for being the God of my life. I ask you to come into my life, cleanse it, make it completely free from all of the toils and snares in my life that cause me to go astray. I pray that because I believe in you and that you were raised from the dead, that you will come in and change my life forever. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And if you pray that prayer with us today, guys, I want you to reach out to us at the Intentionally Uncommon Initiative or reach out to a close church nearby if you're not in the Forgotonia land area or in the New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania area. You can reach out to a church and find out what the next steps are for you as you walk with Christ now from this day forward. And again, you've been watching another episode of the Foundational Fathers podcast. This is the Mute Bass Player alongside Marcus the Philippian and our guests Taylor Mason, Romeo, and Saw.
Thank you.
Signing off.
God bless, guys. Thank you.